Welcome back to the channel where we spotlight Black excellence in film and TV so you don't have to miss some great Black-led roles. Let's get into it. So I finally got around to watching Sing Sing, the critically acclaimed movie based on a true story. Heads up, spoilers ahead. So honestly, while it's not going down as one of my all-time favorite movies or even the best movie for me personally that I saw last year, it did make me think very differently about being Black and navigating the prison system. If you don't know, Sing Sing is inspired by the true story of a theater program inside the Sing Sing Correctional Facility in New York. The story centered around Divine G, which is a pretty cool freaking name to have, who's locked up for a crime he didn't commit. He finds a purpose by joining a theater group made up of other inmates, some of whom are actually playing themselves in the movie, which I thought was pretty cool too. At first, I wasn't even planning to watch this. I mean, I tweeted it out to see if anybody would say, should I watch this? People did reply, so I ended up watching it. I knew it was based on true events and got great reviews, but I couldn't get past this initial feeling of like, do I really care? Do I want to sit through a movie about prisoners playing pretend when some of them are actual murderers? I know it sounds harsh, but that's where my head was at. Funny enough though, my whole channel is basically about watching people play pretend in movies, but somehow it felt different with this. Still, I'm glad I watched it because it forced me to confront some harsh realities. The movie and the real life story behind it shines a light on mass incarceration and its devastating impact on Black people, families, and the community. Whether they're meant to or not, the filmmakers really did a great job highlighting how overrepresented Black men are in prison in both the US and Canada. One thing that stood out to me was how much our community, especially Black men, value being tough. In prison, if you don't look tough or act tough, you're pretty much done for. But watching these men pour themselves into acting, you can see a bit of that ego melt away. It was a reminder that, working together, relying on each other is pretty much the most powerful thing out there. It's the complete opposite of that. I did it on my own mentality we hear in a lot of rap lyrics, something that I myself have adopted, I guess indirectly. I'm also an only child, so I definitely probably has something to do with it. But I often find that working as a team is a lot harder for me than working on my own. But anyways, in the theater work, you can't act out a full play alone. I mean, you could, and I guess there are people who do one-man shows, but who really does that? Everyone needs to be on the same page, collaborating to get the engine going. It made me also think about how easy it is to dehumanize people in prison. We see them as bad guys and forget that prison is supposed to be about rehabilitation, not just locking people away forever. And sure, there are some people who do need to be locked away, but giving others a chance to heal and find a different path is so crucial. In poor Black communities, especially, if kids had more constructive outlets like after school clubs or programs, it could save so many from going down destructive paths. I'm not super familiar with like the whole Japanese system, but it always seems like they have these like after school clubs for kids that can join, especially like to just keep them out of trouble, keep them on an honest path, and just make sure that they're, doing something constructive with all that extra energy that they have, especially when they have such busy work lives over there and their parents are constantly working, I imagine. You need that. You need something for them to be kind of distracted in a way, but also be constructively distracted. Something I wish we did a lot more here in North America. Now, the theater program from Sing Sing gave these men a way to do these things, to confront their past, their future, their present, and find healing. It's proof of how much potential there is when you treat people, like actual human beings instead of statistics. For Black men especially, who are often silenced or overlooked, it's so important to have spaces where we can express ourselves without feeling like we're not tough enough. Something else that really stuck with me is how the movie shows these tough men doing improv exercises, being extremely silly and ridiculous, exactly the way my improv classes were, just having fun and laughing. It reminded me that these are people who have made mistakes or been dealt a bad hand. A lot of the times life can spiral out of control so fast. And sometimes we forget that building something good is so much harder than tearing it down. Building a house is so much harder than setting it on fire and watching it crumble to pieces. There's this one part at the ending of the movie when the main character gets released and the people or the person who comes to pick him up is just a fellow ex-inmate. It's not really his family. That hit me pretty hard. It made me think about my own family. There are people in my family who have been to prison, and honestly, I try to distance myself from that side of my family and the Black community. I've always had this fear of becoming part of that statistic. My dad was part of it, and I would be damn sure not to. But watching these men, watching their pain and channeling it into something creative like acting does make me think about my own father. But it was inspiring. Despite the oppressive environment they were in, the bonds they formed, and the sense of belonging they created, I can't lie, it's pretty powerful stuff. It's a reminder that there's always room for growth and redemption. And that should always be the main purpose, right? Especially when dealing with real human beings who have lives that spiral in all over in different directions. And then there's Coleman Domingo, who plays the main character. His performance incredible. Divine G spends years of fighting to prove his innocence, but at the end of the day, he's just another number in the system. Despite the evidence he brings forth, despite the lack of evidence against him, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter. It's heartbreaking. One man's life sacrificed for so-called justice. Really, it's so the department can close the case and the families affected on the victim's side can get closure and stop asking questions. One Black man's life. And so no one bats an eye. Happens way too often. So when watching this movie and the way it challenges a lot of my assumptions was, pretty eye-opening for me, showing me what prisoners are capable of truly. It was definitely a worthwhile watch that showed me they're not just their crimes or their sentences, they're fathers, brothers, friends, and in this case, artists. So Sing Sing might not be my favorite movie, but it will stick with me for a long time. Anyways, that's all I got to say about this. Glad I decided to give it a look and see. Like, comment, subscribe, share this out, and until next time, let me know what you think about Sing Sing.